I woke to the brush of fingers on my cheek, soft as a whisper, but heavy with intent. My eyes snapped open, heart hammering, and there was Caleb, his face inches from mine, eyes half-lidded in the dark. He froze when I stirred, his hand jerking back like he'd touched fire. And in that moment, the world tilted into something I couldn't name. It was 3 a.m. in our cramped Brooklyn apartment. The kind of place where the walls creaked with secrets and the radiator hissed like it was judging you. Caleb and I had been roommates for 2 years, splitting rent and late-night pizza. Our lives tangled in the easy rhythm of friendship. He was the loud one, always strumming his guitar at odd hours, filling our space with off-key renditions of Springsteen. I was the quiet one, the guy who kept the fridge stocked and the dishes clean, content to let Caleb's chaos fill the gaps. We were opposites, but it worked. Until that night. "Caleb, what the hell?" I whispered, my voice sharp in the stillness. I sat up, the sheets pooling around my waist, my skin prickling where his fingers had been. His eyes were wide now, fully awake, and he stumbled back, nearly knocking over the lamp on his nightstand. Too was dreaming. He stammered, his voice rough, like he was trying to convince himself as much as me. I didn't mean to. I thought I was somewhere else. Somewhere else. I echoed, my pulse still racing. "You were touching my face. Man, that's not a dream." My words hung in the air, heavy and accusing, though I wasn't sure what I was accusing him of. The room felt too small, the air too thick, and I couldn't shake the warmth of his touch, the way it lingered like a bruise. He ran a hand through his messy blonde hair, his face flushed. I swear, Eli, I didn't know what I was doing. I was asleep. It was, I don't know, a reflex or something. His voice cracked, and he looked away, staring at the peeling paint on the wall like it held answers. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to laugh it off, chalk it up to too much whiskey from the bar crawl we'd done earlier. But there was something in his eyes, something raw and unguarded that made my stomach twist. I'd seen Caleb hungover, heartbroken, even crying once when his dog died back home in Ohio. But this was different. This was fear, and it wasn't just about waking me up. "Fine," I said, my voice colder than I meant it to be. "Let's just forget it." I swung my legs out of bed, grabbing my phone from the nightstand, needing something to do with my hands. The screen lit up, casting a harsh glow across the room. 3:07 a.m. I could still feel the ghost of his touch, and it made me want to crawl out of my skin or lean into it, which scared me more. Caleb didn't move. He stood there, his silhouette framed against the window, the city lights bleeding through the blinds. "Eli," he said, barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to freak you out." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My head was a mess, replaying the moment, the way his fingers had felt gentle, deliberate, not the clumsy fumbling of someone. I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know what to do with the way my heart hadn't stopped pounding, or the way I couldn't look at him without feeling something I wasn't ready to name. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Caleb strumming his guitar in the living room. It was his way of pretending everything was normal, but the chords were off, hesitant, like he was second-guessing every note. I stayed in bed longer than usual, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together what had happened. Was he lying? Was I overreacting? And why did it feel like the air between us had changed? Like a wire pulled taut, ready to snap. When I finally dragged myself to the kitchen, Caleb was there, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. He didn't look at me, just slid one across the counter. Made it strong, he said, his voice too casual. Figured you'd need it after last night. I took the mug, my fingers brushing his for a split second, and I flinched. He noticed. Of course he did. His jaw tightened, and he turned away, busying himself with the dishes. The silence was deafening, broken only by the drip of the faucet and the distant hum of traffic outside. Caleb, I started, not sure where I was going with it. About last night. Forget it. He cut in, his voice sharp. It was nothing. I told you. I was dreaming. He scrubbed a plate harder than necessary, his knuckles white. I wanted to push, to ask what kind of dream made him reach for me like that. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I nodded, sipping the coffee, letting the bitterness ground me. But as I watched him move around the kitchen, avoiding my eyes, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had broken or maybe something had started. The rest of the day was a blur of awkward silences and forced normalcy. We went through the motions of heading to my job at the bookstore, Caleb to his gig at the music shop. But every interaction felt like a performance, like we were both trying too hard to pretend nothing had changed. I caught myself watching him when he wasn't looking, noticing the way his hands moved over his guitar, the way his laugh didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. And I hated myself for it, for the questions I couldn't ask, for the feelings I didn't want to admit. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling again, the memory of his touch burning in my mind. I didn't know what it meant for him, for me, for us. But I knew one thing, I couldn't let it go. Not yet. The bookstore was my sanctuary, a maze of shelves and dusty pages where I could lose myself. But that day, every book I shelved felt like a distraction I didn't deserve. My mind kept circling back to Caleb, to the way his fingers had grazed my skin, to the lie he'd told her maybe it wasn't a lie. I didn't know anymore. All I knew was that the air between us had thickened, and I wasn't sure I wanted it to clear. By the time I got home, the apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. Caleb wasn't there, his guitar case gone from its usual spot by the couch. I should have been relieved, but instead, I felt a pang of something I couldn't name disappointment. Maybe, or worse, longing. I dropped my keys on the counter and sank onto the couch, staring at the corkboard where we pinned stupid stuff like takeout menus and concert tickets. My eyes caught on a photo from last summer, me and Caleb at Coney Island, grinning like idiots, his arms slung around my shoulders. I hadn't thought twice about it then. Now, it felt like evidence of something I'd missed. The door creaked open around 9 p.m. and Caleb walked in, his hair damp from the drizzle outside. He was carrying his guitar case and a 6-pack of beer, his usual post-gig ritual. "Hey," he said, his voice careful, like he was testing the waters. "You eat yet?" "Nah," I said, keeping my eyes on the TV, which wasn't even on. "Was waiting for you." He paused, then nodded, setting the beer on the counter. "Cool. I'll order pizza." It was such a normal thing to say, but it felt like we were playing roles in a script we hadn't rehearsed. He grabbed his phone, and I watched him out of the corner of my eye, noticing the way his shoulders were tense, the way he kept glancing at me like he was afraid I'd bolt. The pizza arrived, and we ate in silence. The TV, now flickering with some late-night comedy show neither of us was watching. Halfway through his second slice, Caleb set it down and looked at me, his eyes searching. "Eli, can we talk about it?" My stomach dropped. Talk about what? I said, playing dumb, though my heart was already racing. Last night, he said, his voice low. I know you're pissed. And I get it. I need you to know it wasn't on purpose. I wasn't trying to, he stopped, his hands fidgeting with the beer can. I don't know what I was doing. I wanted to let it go, to nod and move on. But something in me snapped. You don't know? I said, my voice sharper than I meant. You were touching me. Caleb. That's not nothing. You don't just do that in your sleep. His face flushed, and he looked down, his jaw tight. I told you. I was dreaming. It was a mistake. What kind of dream? I pressed, leaning forward, my voice rising. What kind of dream makes you reach for me like that? Because I'm trying to understand. Man, and you're not making it easy. He flinched, like I'd hit him. And for a second, I thought he might walk out. But then he looked up, and his eyes were raw, unguarded, like he was letting me see something he'd kept hidden. I don't know. Okay, he said, his voice breaking. I don't know what it means. I was dreaming about someone, and I thought it was real. And then I woke up, and it was you. And I freaked out. Someone. I repeated, the word heavy in my mouth. Who? He didn't answer. He just stared at the floor, his hands clenched, and the silence stretched on until it felt like it might break us both. Finally, he said, it doesn't matter. It was a dream. Can we just drop it? But I couldn't drop it. Not when his voice trembled like that. Not when I could still feel the weight of his touch. No, I said, standing up, needing to move, to do something with the energy buzzing under my skin. It matters to me. You can't just touch me like that and act like it's nothing. I'm not acting like it's nothing. He snapped, standing too, his voice loud enough to make me flinch. You think this is easy for me? You think I wanted to wake up and see you looking at me like I'm some kind of creep? Then tell me the truth. I shouted back, my chest tight. Stop hiding behind this dream bullshit and just tell me what's going on. The room went quiet again. The kind of quiet that hurts. Caleb's eyes were wet, and he blinked hard, like he was trying to keep something in. I can't, he whispered. I don't even know how. I wanted to push, to demand answers, but the look on his face stopped me. He looked like he was unraveling, and I didn't know how to handle that. So I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. I need some air, I muttered, and before he could say anything, I was gone. The streets of Brooklyn were alive with noise cars honking, music spilling from bars, people laughing like nothing in the world was wrong. I walked until my legs ached, until the cold bit through my jacket, trying to make sense of the mess in my head. Caleb was my best friend, the guy who'd been there through my worst days, who knew me better than anyone. But now, every memory felt like it was shifting, like I was seeing him for the first time. And I didn't know what to do with that. When I finally got back to the apartment, it was past midnight. Caleb was asleep on the couch, his guitar resting on his chest, one hand curled around it like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. I stood there for a long time, watching him, wondering what he wasn't telling me and what I wasn't telling myself. The next few days were a tightrope walk. Caleb and I moved around each other like we were afraid to touch. Every conversation clipped and careful. I'd catch him watching me sometimes, his eyes lingering a second too long. And I'd look away, my face hot, my heart a traitor. Work was no better. I'd shelve books, my hands shaking, replaying that night. His touch. His excuses. I wanted to believe it was nothing. But the truth was clawing its way out. And I wasn't ready to face it. Friday night. Caleb had a gig at a dive bar in Williamsburg. He'd invited me. Like always. But this time I almost didn't go. The thought of sitting in a crowded room, watching him pour his heart into his music, felt too raw, too close. But I went anyway, because staying home felt worse. The bar was packed, the air thick with smoke and cheap beer. Caleb was on stage, his guitar slung low, his voice rough and soulful as he sang about love and loss and things left unsaid. I stood at the back, nursing a drink, trying not to feel the lyrics like they were meant for me. After his set, he found me in the crowd, his face flushed with adrenaline. "You came," he said, a smile breaking through the tension that had been there all week. "Thought you might bail." "Almost did," I admitted, and his smile faltered. He opened his mouth to say something, but someone called his name, a friend from the music shop, waving him over. He hesitated, then clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture that felt too normal, too forced. "Grab a drink later?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, though I wasn't sure I meant it. He nodded and disappeared into the crowd, leaving me with my thoughts and a half-empty glass. I stayed longer than I planned, watching him laugh with his friends, his ease with them a stark contrast to the way he'd been with me. It stung, and I hated that it did. When I finally left, the night air was sharp, cutting through the haze in my head. I walked home, my mind a tangle of questions I didn't want to answer. Was I reading too much into this? Was I the one making it weird? Or was there something real behind his touch? His fear? His silence? Back at the apartment, I found a note on the fridge, "Gone to crash at Mike's. See you tomorrow." See, my stomach twisted. Mike was his buddy from the music shop, but Caleb hadn't mentioned staying out. It felt like avoidance, like he was running from me or from himself. I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash, then sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. The next morning, I woke to the sound of keys in the lock. Caleb stumbled in, looking like he hadn't slept, his eyes shadowed and his hair a mess. "Hey," he said, dropping his guitar case by the door. "Didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't," I lied, sitting up. "You okay?" He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "Yeah. Just rough night." He grabbed a glass of water and leaned against the counter, his movement slow, deliberate, like he was buying time. "Caleb," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. "We can't keep doing this. Pretending everything's fine. It's not." He froze, the glass halfway to his lips. "What do you want me to say, Eli?" he asked, his voice low, almost pleading. "I told you it was a mistake. I don't know what else you want." "I want the truth," I said, standing, my hands clenched at my sides. "I want to know why you touched me. I want to know what you're not saying." He set the glass down hard, the sound sharp in the quiet. "You think I know?" he snapped, his eyes flashing. "You think I've got this all figured out? I don't. Okay. I'm as confused as you are." "Then talk to me." I shot back, stepping closer. "Stop shutting me out and just tell me what's going on." He laughed, but it was bitter, hollow. "You want to know what's going on? Fine. I've been a mess for months. Eli. Months. And I didn't know why until..." He stopped, his breath catching, his eyes locked on mine. Until that night. My heart stopped. What does that mean? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He shook his head, his hands trembling. I can't do this right now, he said, and before I could stop him, he grabbed his jacket and walked out. I stood there, frozen, the slam of the door echoing in my chest. He was gone again, and I was left with nothing but questions and a growing ache I couldn't ignore. I didn't know what he meant, but I knew it changed everything. And I knew I couldn't let him run forever. I didn't see Caleb for 2 days. He texted once. A vague need some space. Be back soon. And that was it. The apartment felt hollow without him. The silence louder than his guitar ever was. I went through the motions work. Home. Sleep, but every moment was haunted by his absence. By the words he hadn't said. I kept replaying our last conversation. The way his voice broke. The way his eyes had held mine like he was drowning. I wanted to fix it, but I didn't even know what was broken. On the 3rd day, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone and texted him, we need to talk. Come home. No response. I waited an hour. Then 2. My anxiety spiking with every passing minute. Finally, I called Mike, who sounded half asleep when he answered. Yeah, Caleb's here, he said. He's been weird. You want me to tell him to call you? No, I said, already grabbing my keys. I'm coming over. Mike's place was a cramped loft in Bushwick, all exposed brick and mismatched furniture. When I got there, Caleb was on the couch, strumming his guitar, his eyes distant. Mike let me in and mumbled something about giving us space before disappearing into his room. Caleb looked up, startled, his fingers stilling on the strings. Eli, he said, his voice rough. What are you doing here? You can't just disappear, I said, crossing my arms to keep my hands from shaking. You don't get to run away and leave me with nothing. He set the guitar down, his movement slow, like he was afraid to break something. I'm not running, he said, but it sounded like a lie. I just needed to think. Think about what? I pressed, stepping closer. About touching me. About what you said. Because I'm losing my mind here. Caleb. And you're not helping. He stood, his hands shoved in his pockets, his eyes anywhere but on me. I don't know how to do this. Okay, he said, his voice cracking. I don't know how to say it without screwing everything up. Then just say it, I said, my voice softer now, pleading. Whatever it is, just tell me. I can handle it. He laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. Can you? Because I can't. He paced, his hands raking through his hair. I've been trying to figure this out for months. Eli. Trying to understand why I feel like this. Why I can't stop thinking about you. He stopped, his breath hitching. And when he looked at me, his eyes were raw, unguarded. Why I touched you that night. My heart stopped. The room felt too small, the air too heavy. What are you saying? I asked, my voice barely audible. I'm saying I'm in love with you, he said, the words spilling out like they'd been trapped too long. And I didn't know it until that night. And now I can't take it back. And I'm terrified it's going to ruin everything. I stared at him, my mind blank, my heart a riot. Love. The word felt too big, too impossible, but it fit, like a key turning in a lock I hadn't known was there. All the moments I'd ignore the way he'd linger when we talked, the way his laugh made my chest ache, The way his touch had felt like a spark came rushing back. And I couldn't breathe. "Caleb," I started. But he cut me off. "Don't," he said, his voice breaking. "Don't say anything yet. I know you're straight. I know this is messed up. I know I shouldn't have." He stopped. His hands clenched. His eyes wet. "I just needed you to know." I didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to process the weight of his words. I wasn't sure what I felt: anger, fear, something else, but I knew I couldn't let him stand there, breaking apart. "I'm not. I don't know what I am," I admitted, my voice shaking. "But I'm not okay with you running away from this." "From me?" He looked at me, his eyes searching, like he was waiting for me to push him away. But I didn't. I stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat of him, close enough to see the fear in his eyes. "Come home," I said. "We'll figure it out." He nodded, his shoulders sagging, like he'd been carrying something too heavy for too long. We didn't say much on the walk back, but the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of things we hadn't said, things we weren't ready to say. But it was a start. Back at the apartment, the air felt different, charged with the weight of Caleb's confession. We didn't talk about it. Not right away. Instead, we fell back into our routine: coffee, music, takeout, but it was like we were moving through a fog, every glance heavy with meaning. I caught myself watching him, noticing things I hadn't before: the way his hands moved when he talked, the way his eyes softened when he laughed. It scared me. How natural it felt. How much I wanted to lean into it. A week later, we were on the couch, splitting a pizza and watching some terrible action movie. Caleb was sprawled out, his feet on the coffee table, his laughter filling the room. For a moment, it felt like before, like nothing had changed. But then he looked at me, his smile fading, and I knew we couldn't keep pretending. "Eli," he said, his voice quiet, "can I ask you something?" I nodded, my heart in my throat. "Yeah." "Do you hate me?" he asked, his eyes fixed on the TV, like he couldn't bear to look at me. For what I said. For everything. "No," I said, too quickly, my voice firm. "I don't hate you. I could never hate you." He turned to me then, his eyes searching. "Then what are you thinking?" "Because I'm going crazy here, not knowing." I took a deep breath, trying to find the words. "I'm thinking. I don't know what I'm thinking," I admitted. "I'm confused." "Okay. I've never felt like this before. Not about anyone. Not like this." His eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked like he might cry. "Like what?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Like I can't stop thinking about you," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "Like I'm scared of what it means. But I'm more scared of losing you." He didn't say anything, just stared at me, his breath uneven. Then, slowly, he reached out, his hand hovering near mine, like he was asking permission. I didn't move away. His fingers brushed mine, tentative, and it was like a spark, igniting something I'd been trying to ignore. "Caleb," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't know what I'm doing." "Me neither," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "But maybe we can figure it out together." I nodded, my heart pounding. And for the first time, I let myself feel the pull, the connection, the something that had been there all along. We didn't kiss, didn't cross that line, but we sat there, hands touching, the movie forgotten, and it felt like enough. For now. The next few weeks were a blur of small moment-shared glances, lingering touches, conversations that went deeper than they ever had. Caleb opened up about his past, about growing up in a small town where being different wasn't an option, about the fear that had kept him silent for so long. I told him about my own doubts, my own fears, about never feeling like I fit anywhere. It was raw, messy, but it was real. One night, after too many beers and a playlist of Caleb's favorite songs, he leaned in, his forehead resting against mine. "Eli," he whispered, his breath warm against my skin. "I don't want to push you, but I need you to know, I'm all in." I closed my eyes, my heart racing. "I'm trying," I said. "I'm getting there." He smiled, and it was enough. For now, it was enough. The city was changing with the seasons, the air crisp with autumn, the streets alive with color. Caleb and I were changing too, navigating something new, something fragile. We hadn't put a name to it, but it was there in every touch, every shared laugh, every quiet moment. I was falling for him, and it terrified me, but I couldn't stop. One evening, we went to a concert in Prospect Park, some indie band Caleb loved. The crowd was thick, the music loud, and we stood close, our shoulders brushing. Halfway through the set, he grabbed my hand, his fingers lacing through mine, and I didn't pull away. It felt right, like a piece of me had been waiting for this. When the music slowed, he turned to me, his eyes bright under the string lights. "You okay?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the crowd. "Yeah," I said, squeezing his hand. "More than okay." He smiled, and for the first time, I saw hope in his eyes, not fear. We stayed like that, hand in hand, the world fading around us. It was a moment I wanted to hold on to, a moment that felt like ours. But life doesn't let you stay in those moments. A week later, Caleb got a call from his mom. His dad was sick, heart trouble, bad enough to need surgery. He had to go back to Ohio, and the weight of it hit him hard. I saw it in the way he packed, his hands shaking, his eyes distant. "I'll be back in a week," he said, but his voice was hollow, like he wasn't sure. "Let me come with you," I offered, surprising myself. "You shouldn't do this alone." He shook his head, his jaw tight. "I can't ask you to do that, Eli. It's complicated. My family, they're not." He trailed off, but I knew what he meant. They weren't like us, weren't ready for whatever we were becoming. "You're not asking," I said, stepping closer. "I'm offering." He looked at me, his eyes searching, and for a moment, I thought he'd say yes. But then he shook his head again. "I need to do this alone," he said. "But I'll call you. Okay? Every day?" I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "You better." He left the next morning, and the apartment felt like a ghost town. I kept busy work, errands, anything to keep my mind off him, but every night, when he called, his voice was all I needed. He told me about his dad, about the hospital, about the fights with his mom over things he couldn't change. I listened, wishing I could be there, wishing I could hold him through it. One night, his voice was different, softer, like he was letting me in. "Eli," he said, "I miss you. More than I thought I would." My heart ached, and I closed my eyes, picturing him. "I miss you too," I said. "Come back soon." I will. He promised. And when I do, I want to do this right. You and me. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. Yeah, I said. You and me. Caleb came back after 10 days, looking worn but lighter, like he'd left some of his burdens behind. His dad was stable, he said, but the trip had taken a toll. We didn't talk about it right away, just fell back into our routine. But there was a new closeness between us, a quiet understanding. One night, as we sat on the roof, the city sprawling below us, he took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my skin. I told my mom, he said, his voice steady but soft. About me. About us. I froze, my heart pounding. What did she say? He shrugged, his eyes on the skyline. She didn't take it well. Said I was confused, that I needed to come home for good. But I told her I'm not confused. Not anymore. I squeezed his hand, my chest tight. I'm proud of you, I said, and I meant it. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, he said, turning to me, his eyes bright. But you make it worth it. My breath caught, and before I could think, I leaned in, closing the distance between us. Our lips met, tentative at first, then deeper, like we were saying all the things we hadn't dared to. It was messy, imperfect, but it was us, and it was everything. From then on, we were all in. We didn't have a label, didn't need one. We were Caleb and Eli, and that was enough. We spent our days exploring the city, our nights tangled in each other, learning what it meant to be together. There were challenges, whispers from coworkers, sideways glances from strangers, but we faced them together, our hands always finding each other. Months later, we stood in our apartment, packing for a new Placia small house in Queens, our first real home together. The memory of that night, when Caleb's touch had changed everything, felt like a lifetime ago. We'd fought, we'd faltered, but we'd found our way, and the journey had made us stronger. As we taped up the last box, Caleb pulled me into his arms, his chin resting on my head. You know, he said, his voice warm, I still dream about you. But now, I don't have to wake up alone. I laughed, my heart full. Good, I said, kissing him softly. Because I'm not going anywhere. We carried the boxes out, the future ahead of us, uncertain but ours. That night, when Caleb had touched me, swearing it was a dream, had been the spark that lit our path, a path of fear, love, and truth. And as we stepped into our new life, I knew one thing, it was worth every moment.